Hello and welcome to the European VC, your go-to place for insights into the European VC industry. Broadcasting from Portugal, I am David Cruz e Silva.
And from Denmark, I'm Andreas Monkholm.
And welcome to the third episode of EUVC. If you would like to suggest topics or guests for future episodes, please reach out to us at theeuropeanvc.com. If you're about to raise an international round, do feel free to reach out for an introduction to relevant VCs.
Today, we're joined by Michael Hansen, CEO of DanBAN, Denmark's leading business angel association. DanBAN consists of more than 200 active angels who collectively invest in more than 30 million euros on an annual basis. Prior to joining DanBAN, Michael was the chief architect behind the sprawling investment environment around the Danish Robotics Cluster, which is broadly recognized as one of the very strongest clusters for robotics companies in Europe, if not the world. Today, we'll focus on Michael's time taking the investor ecosystem around the robotics cluster from nothing to world-class and translating his learnings from that side of the table to relevant advice to VCs and angels.
Before we really jump into the details of the interview, we'd like to give some time for you to present yourself to our listeners so they get to know you a bit better. Tell us a bit about your story, how you've gone from an electrical engineer to the main architect behind this wildly successful investor base around the robotics cluster in Denmark, and then on to become the CEO of DanBAN, the Danish Business Angel Network.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm quite sure that people relations, the thing of being a networker and also have the flair for sales and marketing is the keywords here. I know how to talk to people. I know how to create value between people. And I always believe that we can do better and faster. So it's not much about how I became an engineer, but more on how I actually work as a human being in this ecosystem. And then I can see that the crossfield between investors and companies are my sweet spot. I'm really good when it comes to bridging the gap between investors and startups.
So, Michael, I would love to deep dive a bit on the topic of cluster and network development. I was thinking maybe we should start this conversation by asking you to share your perspectives on what you think make a strong investor ecosystem.
Yeah, you need to have something to invest in. So when you build an investor network, as we did around the Danish Robotics Cluster, we were building on 30 years history of robotics from the shipyard industry. And we were also building on that the cluster management was really, really strong. A strong team, highly skilled business developers. So it all starts out with the capability that we had in robotics. And then we built from there. The budget was secured for the strong cluster management team. And I was hired in as a specialist in fundraising to help bridging the gap between all the companies looking for money and of course, building this investor network. What also makes a strong cluster is, I think we call it a business first approach to make sure that the companies actually work together creating new business cases. And when we have new business cases, we have new companies and then we have investment possibilities. So that's also very, very important. Investor relations, you don't just call a guy with money and say, hey, come and see us. You need to show the whole story. So we were standing on the shoulders of a strong cluster with a track record becoming even better and bigger. And then we made this single point of contact. So everybody with money wanting to invest in robotics, automation, and drones, they could come to one person. And in this case, it was me. And I was connected to everybody. So this one-door policy or single point of contact is very, very important. And then it's also, back to what I said in the beginning, it's also about marketing. So we were showing all the successes in the cluster and we were showing investments possibilities and we were showing the strong founders globally. So I think that's some of the things that made it a success.
Yeah, talking about successful entrepreneurs and then them becoming part of the venture investing ecosystem, so to speak.
Yeah,
it's something we actually had a chat about with the previous guests, with Stefan Moraes. Stefan Moraes is managing partner of Indico Capital Partners, so a Portuguese early stage deep tech fund. And we ended up chatting about the fact that most entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs with exits, end up not going the LP route, so investing in funds, but typically going the business angel route. Based on the experience with the Danish cluster, robotics cluster, what is your take on this?
I see some very high skilled people, intelligent people, young people that have done it themselves. And now suddenly they have a lot of money and a lot of experience and a lot of network and they want to do things themselves. They don't want other people to handle their money in a business where they have done success already. I think when it comes to real estate and all these things, then they will go to normal sources. But when it comes to driving up new startups and investing in startups and spreading risk in different sectors, they want to do things themselves.
If I could follow up on that, Michael, the question that I'm sitting with is then, now that they do it themselves, do you see that they're good at syndicating, or do you see that they often also try and get the deals for themselves and develop them by themselves?
I mostly see that they spread risk, and I also see that they work together with other business angels or other people from the ecosystem that are highly skilled. Some do it, especially here around the robotics. We have those individuals that are very, very well connected. So when I look at the robotic cluster, it is a informal network of highly individuals. When I look at with CEO title today at Danish Business Angels, I can see that in a broader perspective in the Nordics, we have two organizations. The one is the Nordic Makers, which is a Nordic approach where they collect the best founders in the Nordics, and they work together and have even one person hired to screen all incoming cases to help them actually, because all these highly skilled individuals, they get probably 1 to 5 pitch decks per day or per week. But Nordic Makers is one. The other one is by founders, which is a VC today. And I think they have 45 founders in their, portfolio of investors. So these two is what I can see try to collect these founders into some organizations, but they are individuals. They have done it themselves, and they have their own way of doing things. Certainly, we can see this.
Would you elaborate on that? What do you see being the strengths and weaknesses of doing it that way?
The strength is you have people that have made success themselves prior or earlier. That might be an advantage because then they know how to do things. On the other hand, just because you have one success, it doesn't make you into an app factory for successes. So when you come as a new startup and you're looking for funding, then you as a startup, of course, should screen your investors for, can they actually help me with more than just money?
And where do you see the role of cluster management in that, coming back to the role that you've had before?
Oh, yeah, close collaboration. The cluster management need to be totally aligned with the top 10 or top 20 investors in the specific verticals. So back to where I said a single point of contact or this one door policy, you have one door to enter, and then you say, hey, I am this guy, I have this need, I have this kind of money, I'm looking for this kind of investment or this kind of resources. Who do I speak with? That is so important. And then what we did around the Danish Robotics Cluster were that we had one annual investor summit last time when we could meet in real life. We had 350 participants just in robotics. We had 8 robotic companies coming from all over the world. We had investors coming from all over the world in this specific vertical called robotics. So that was our way to having a demo day or portfolio day as a cluster. Normally we speak portfolio day or demo day as venture companies, but we also had investment possibilities. So when we could attract from the outside, that's when we could see that we really had hit the bullseye in being the cluster for robotics or collaborative robots in the world.
The story of the Investor Summit, I think, is quite interesting. How you took something that no one knew about and built an investment environment very much around these summits. Could you explain your thinking around that and your experience?
Yes. In the beginning, when we made the strategy back in 2015, we were sure that we by email or by an IT platform could make things happen. Kind of an Airbnb matching between those who had the money and those who were looking for the money. But we could see that meeting in real life was what was so much more effective, because investors want to see what they are investing in. So when we made the first, that's actually a funny story. When we made the first investor summit, we thought that we could have 5-8 companies and maybe 15 investors. It was in the early days, and I was in Vegas for a 40-year-old birthday, and I had jet lag. So I woke up every morning at 2:30, but then my email just exploded, and we just ended up with 60 investors and almost 20 companies looking for money. And I needed from Vegas by email coordinating venue and food and beverage, and it was crazy. So I could see that the thought of making this in real life meetups as the investor summit was right. So that's where we began, and then it just took off from there.
Coming back with that note and coming back to something you said a while ago, the fact that these individuals, these successful entrepreneurs, they all live in the same city. And also based on that curious story you said, I imagine there is a close relationship with the city itself. And I would love for you to explain to us a bit what is the type of relationship that is with the city, and to what extent the city was involved in this process as well.
Yeah, that's again a really good question, and the answer can be really, really a long answer here. But I think taking into a very, very, very short explanation, the city itself they made a choice. They wanted to build this, and then they found money for 5 years to build this. And then how do you build this the right way? You have the strategy, you have the money, and then you need to build this in a triple helix between education, between companies, and between the local government / the city. It was really difficult, but I can say today that the politicians were brave. They made some brave choices. They hired highly skilled business developers that wanted to make a difference in the city, and I think then the rest is kind of story. But these money and the dedication with the strategy made the strong cluster, and it was, I think, do we say long-term money in English? So we had 5 years to build, and we needed to show results within 2 or 3 years, and we did it.
Sorry for interrupting you, but what about exactly that? Because I find that really interesting, also for other listeners. What do we know about then the impact that the cluster later on had on the city, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The whole business case were more employees pay more taxes. So it's quite simple. So and the city itself cannot invest in companies. It's against the law. But what we can do, we can match companies looking for money with investors. So that was the whole essence of the business case.
I'm so glad to hear you giving some love to the local government, because that's quite rare. So not specifically in Odense, but it is in general quite rare to hear VCs and angels being overly excited about the role of government. So I'm glad to hear that they've played an important role here.
Yeah.
But Michael, now I'd love to shift gears a bit and focus on your new role as CEO of the Danish Business Angel Network. Of course, I'm very interested in hearing about how you work with the top angels in Denmark, and especially how you have taken the organization and really made a giant leap towards an internationalization of the network, and also for the network to come closer to VC, so making the angel investors work closer with the VC community. Would you elaborate a bit on what you think here?
Oh, yes, and that's a very interesting topic, so I hope you have a lot of time now. No.
You've got plenty.
I'm starting out again in Odense around the robotics. I could concentrate myself on a deep, narrow vertical in robotics, and I made a huge difference. I think I was the way they counted. I helped created 350 new jobs in the city over that 5-year period. Now I switch into Denmark's business angel network, and we see 600 cases every year. We're now up to 230 members, and and our relations to VCs and funds in general are already becoming stronger. In the last 2 months, we've had 4 new funds coming into the network as paying partners, and the whole talk about that we see 600 cases. We last year we invested 30 million euros, and we are really good when startups looking for money for the first or the second time. What we're not good at yet is to show our portfolio, because our investors have more than 500 companies in the portfolio, and this portfolio in our terms is a damn good portfolio, because when you have 230 business angels making due diligence on more than 1,000 startups, when they choose to invest in our world, it's the good companies. So we can now see that the funds are interested in getting into a closer collaboration with us, because especially the VCs would like to see or to get to know the companies 12 to 18 months before they actually